All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Desert Harvest Podcast. I'm here with my partner in crime, Oren Molovinsky. Oren,
Nice to see you as always.
I'm kind of irritated with you, I think, though, Oren. I
Yeah.
just, yeah, I don't know how long Don Guerra's Barrio Bagel and Slice has been open, but you know what? Actually, I do know how long because I think I'm a pound heavier for every day that you've been in there. I'm not sure what the record is for bagels and slices, but I'm sure I am the current holder of it. I've been in there eating every day, but I'm
Well,
also delighted with you because every bite of food I've had has been amazing. So thank you.
well, on the flip side, I'm going to write a book, a diet book called "Open a Restaurant and Lose 20."
I'm,
Because that's what happened to me. I never lose weight, and lost a lot of weight on the.
yeah, well, standing from 5:30 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night for the last 30 days straight probably had something to do with it. Opening a restaurant is not for the meek. We know that. And the color that the restaurants added to the community is evident immediately. And you and I love to find, people in the world who are making the community richer with their own unique perspective. And, I don't know how you and I have gotten so lucky, but today we have another chance to talk to one of those people who are really bringing an interesting perspective, a unique kind of point of view to the Arizona culinary scene. So Tamara Stanger, thank you for spending some time with Oren and I. We're really grateful that you're willing to
My
talk with us.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And Tamara,
Um,
we did a podcast, and just before we started the podcast, we asked you all kinds of interesting things. We know you got lots to say, and I know that there's three or four really important things that I know we want to talk about throughout the hour, but I'm curious about your perspective on just the Arizona culinary scene as a culinary scene, because Warren and I are under the impression, we're of the opinion that it's underappreciated. And
mhm.
I'm curious how you see the Arizona culinary scene and
Yeah.
what people either are missing in it, our brethren in LA and San Francisco and New York who are thinking, we're not the stop they should be thinking of us are, or maybe even misunderstand. Could you talk a little bit
Well,
about your
the
point of view
reason
there?
why there's a misunderstanding is because Arizona is located in the Southwest,
Mm,
but the Southwest of the US is a huge area. So
yes.
you can't say that Arizona food. I say this a lot, so people have probably heard me say this before, but we're not the same as New Mexico cuisine.
That's right.
We're not the same as Tex-Mex. We're not the same as Baja California. Arizona has its own distinctive flavor, and it's something that comes from the Sonora Desert. It comes from like the people that lived here before we had this modern civilization. It's
Mhm.
the foods. That's why I love to forage, is because there's foods that grow here that are ancient and they speak Arizona. They're been a part of sustaining people for a really long time. They're really healthy. They taste like nothing you can get anywhere else. And I would say that our distinctive style is ancient. It's very I'm trying to think of the word. It's kind of like French cuisine versus Italian cuisine. It's more delicate. It's more like we're not infusing all the butter, but we're taking this mass amount of flavor and making something really delicate with it. And I think it's really interesting the things that grow here. I heard this once. I don't know if it's completely true, but I think it's almost true. Is there's more edible foods in the Sonoran Desert, like a variety, than anywhere else in the world,
Really?
because we have so many different ecosystems. Like you can go up the mountain and get juniper and pinyon and
Yeah.
different kind of berries, and then you can go mid and you can get lots of cactus and other kinds of berries and different nuts, and then you go to southern Arizona and there's just like all the yucca and the fishing and like just different things that grow throughout our state. I think give us so many edible things. I mean, I can go into the desert and just spot non like thing after thing after thing that is edible. Should you take it? Probably not, because it feeds a lot of things. And that's like the crazy thing about foraging. It doesn't actually mean taking stuff, but I think our food here is special.
Well,
And I've been working really hard to kind of teach people about it so
well,
they can.
let's talk about foraging, Tamara, because that's like Oren and I have had a lot of conversations about farming and, agriculture and how a farmer might grow something in a particular way, and how the way one farmer grows something is different and better than the way another farmer grows it, because we have opinions about there are different and better ways of growing food. But foraging is a very different principle, and the relationship between the food and the person who's doing the foraging, I feel like, is a different relationship than the farmer growing the food growing relationship. So could you talk a little bit about what that is? And, I think
Yeah,
when someone hears foraging, they think, well, should I be stranded on a desert island? Then I will forage.
you would starve to death because you need a lot of things. Well, humans started foraging before they were farming.
Hmm.
And actually, they were a lot happier as a people because they had hundreds of varieties and they could move their clan around and constantly find food. And a lot of it was healthy and some of it was dangerous, which they probably learned through trial and error. But foraging for food is a very close connection with the land. It's identification, which is like the biggest thing. You don't want to poison yourself or somebody else. It's understanding the health of the plants, where it's coming from, like whose land it's on, if it's necessary for wildlife. There's a lot of things that go behind foraging. Foraging is really special because there's no bigger locality than something that is either native or naturalized, which means native means it's from the area, naturalized means it was introduced and it is prolific now. It does really well. But it's really special to have that connection. And there's so many rules I think people should follow when it comes to foraging. And it's like, you probably aren't going to collect things when you go foraging. You're probably going to learn about things. You're going to scout them and you're going to learn about the plants. And if there's enough for you to take, you take only what you need. And
Okay.
then you learn how to cook with it, because not every part of a plant is edible. Sometimes there's only certain parts of a plant that's edible. So it's kind of learning about it, and it's really close. It's almost spiritual, your connection with the earth when you do that. And it's a very indigenous thing too. It's the people are first stewards of the land. They lived from foraging
Sure.
and farming, like a mixture of stuff, but it's something that you really have to take a lot of time. You don't just go into the desert and be like, look at all this cactus. I'm just gonna decimate it and take it, and then it will disappear from that area. So there's a lot of rules behind it. I really love it. I've been foraging since I was a little kid.
Mhm.
And so it's something I've always done. And it's mostly like the big thing we always foraged was juniper, because the juniper berries have yeast on them. And so you can make pancakes like and sourdough pretty easy with it. The branches you can burn into ash, which is highly nutritious. I think a gram of juniper ash equals a cup of milk, like an 8-ounce glass of milk, and calcium, among a bunch of other things. So like there's a lot of cool things that come from foraging. It's really awesome. And then you have farming, which people, they settled down from foraging and they became farmers. And then suddenly you're working, instead of 5-hour days, you're working 20-hour days, and you're growing 5 sets of crops, but you're also feeding more people and you're increasing civilization, because you can't have civilization without like grains and things like that. And they're both really special. You cannot feed a civilization this big off foraging, but you cannot farming. And I feel like everyone should learn how to be a farmer. I think everyone needs to understand how to grow food, because who knows what the future is going to bring, like especially dry farming, which is a huge thing in Arizona. It's really special. That's another thing when we talk about Arizona cuisine. It's not like avocados and tomatoes. And even though that's part of it, because we are a agricultural state and we can grow year round, but it's the dry farming crops. It's the tepary beans. It's the itoy onions. It's the mesquite pods. It's the things that grow without much water because, I mean, we live in the desert, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about the future, that has to be a part of it or food doesn't exist. So I really went on a tangent there, but I feel like both farming and foraging is really special. And I feel regardless, if you can stick your hands into soil and connect with it on some level, you're doing better than most humans on earth. I think it's important to understand food is to understand what is growing that food. And that's not just a lot of people working hard. It's also the soil, which is the most important part of our food system. So that's a lot.
A really great perspective on food. And I have a question more on the restaurant side because, you know, our guests they should know this, but you're a chef and that you obviously have to not just, you know, when you're foraging or working with farmers or farming yourself, you have to convert that into a menu item or menu item. So what is your process? I mean, it would be interesting to understand, like, do you work from the menu item backwards or do you work from what you're foraging?
Yeah, nice.
You create the dish around what you forage. Does that bring you inspiration? That's the first part of the question. So I'll stop there and
We'll start with that. So it completely starts with the ingredient because you can never predict what's out there. You can't predict how much of it is out there. You can't predict if you can even harvest any of it. I am definitely very inspired by being outside, by the desert and how things look. That's how I want my plating to look. So that's a huge inspiration. But creating foraged items definitely comes from, can I get enough of something without harming the environment to put it on my menu? That's it depends on how you utilize it. I had a restaurant in Tempe, Arizona called Cotton and Copper, and we were very Arizona. I put a lot of foraged items on the menu, but usually if it was something I could only get a small amount of, it would be like a mignonette that went on an oyster, or it would be a garnish on something, or I make pies. It would be like a flavor in that pie because I wouldn't need a whole lot of it, but it's like being smart about it and bringing that flavor and teaching people about it. I really love cactus. I feel like cactus should be our state food. We have 5 C's of Arizona. We should have 6 C's of Arizona, cactus being the top. But I love how abundant it is. And there's so many ways to use it, and you don't need that much of it. So you could take like barrel cactus, which people plant as ornamentals all through the city. And I love the idea of urban foraging if you know that people aren't using pesticides or whatever. But there's so much that grows in the city that you don't even have to harm the environment by foraging in the city with permission, of course, and adding that into food. So a lot of times I put cactus into food. Get the barrel cactus, which looks like a little pineapple, has these crunchy seeds in the middle. It tastes like a mix between apple and pineapple. It's got and lemon. It's got a great flavor. So I would definitely use that and develop different menu items. And they would usually be specials that I make a certain amount and then it's gone. Because that's just how it works with forage things. Or baby cactus pads. People know what Nepalese are, the big cactus leaves, but they have a distinctive flavor. It's like green beans. But when you take a baby cactus pad, it's like really bright and tastes more like citrus. And so it brings another flavor. And that's a really fun one. And you don't have to really worry about the spines on there because they have little fingers. They haven't even really started growing spines yet. So that's cool things I like to use. Definitely cactus. Every cactus fruit is edible. Every cactus fruit has a different source of magic, which I say in a way, it affects you health wise differently. Like a prickly pear fruit has a crazy thing. I don't even know the science behind it, but it will lower your body temperature. So if you are getting heat stroke in the desert, it will lower your body temperature almost immediately. And I've used this on people I've worked with that are getting overheated, especially in the summertime, and it like brings down your body temperature. And I think that's one of nature's ways of like helping us
Yeah.
in the indigenous sense. And like saguaro fruit, which you should never forage ever without a native guide. I don't know a whole lot about its benefits, but I do know that I brought a pooch to my mother's husband who has PTSD from the war, and he hasn't slept in years. And when he drank it, he slept 12 hours through the night. And he drank more and slept again with no nightmares
Wow.
through the night. And I wonder if that the magic of that fruit is to like calm the mind, maybe.
So it sounds
And
to me, I mean, what you have is a very careful observation of what's around you. You have a deep knowledge of what's available to create, what type of palette, and that you're willing to adjust the painting to the amount of paint that you
yeah,
have as well. You're not going to force, um, hey, if I have a little bit of something, I'll construct something with just a little bit rather than to go out and hurt what, is the system that's producing it. So, Oren, but you had a follow-up question. What were you going to ask, secondly?
Well, I guess the follow-up question is you just mentioned you had the restaurant in Tempe. Now you're in Flagstaff, and I know, like my experience here in Arizona is that Flagstaff and Tucson maybe have a little bit more of an appreciation for the finer points of Sonoran cuisine and understanding how our ecology works, with the food. And I think it seems to me that there's more of an appreciation. But you've been there, and do you feel like there is an appreciation throughout the state for these types of foods, or do you feel like it's still kind of fledgling and we need to encourage more people to try?
great question. Tucson's ahead of the curve. They know all about the desert. They utilize a lot of the desert. I feel like if a restaurant's in Tucson, they're gonna probably expect those foods to be on the menu. Flagstaff they're open to it. I have rabbit on the menu, and I didn't know how people would react, and there's a big love for it, as well as a lot of the other ingredients. I feel like people are very open to it here. But there needs to be a lot more education because I feel like people are eating it and they're seeing it as a novelty rather than seeing it as an important food that needs to be a staple food. Like again, when going back to farmers, these things are seen as novelty foods because we don't have enough farmers growing them in the area, and we need that. So I would love for my influence to, especially with the kids that I work with, to really influence them to be farmers, to maybe grow some of these things that should be staple foods. Phoenix took a while, but people came to expect it. So I didn't, I think, enough out there that people would come into my restaurant and they would expect Arizona food. They would expect things that
Yeah.
came from the local farmers. They would expect the strange ingredients. And then I educated my staff how to actually talk to them about it, because if I'm working in the back, it's really hard to explain to a guest the importance of the corn that you're getting or the beans you're getting or cactus, without the servers understanding 100%, like they're bringing it to the guests. So it's a lot of education behind it. I've been in Flagstaff since December, so we're working on education with my staff. So I think they get it, but I don't know that they know how to talk about it. But they are learning a lot about what makes it special here. Yeah, but Phoenix, there's other great chefs that after I left Phoenix during COVID, we shut down, and I left to Utah for a few years, and I saw a lot of chefs kind of pick up in my place and really doing incredible stuff with the Arizona cuisine. One being Donnie at Valentine. Like he really knows how to take Sonoran food and make it so special. And the cool thing about Donnie is his Asian background. Most people don't realize that without the people coming from Asia, they built the first farms in Arizona. Like, sorry, my phone is going into power mode. They built most of the farms, and Asian cuisine is such a huge part of Arizona cuisine, and it's been around for a really long time. So I love seeing a chef with an Asian background that can help people understand that kind of like influence between it, because it is a big part. You go to the farmers markets and there's generations of Asian farmers there.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of our culture too. So we're so multicultural. Like Arizona is indigenous. Arizona is really influenced by Spanish trade. Asia people here, like Asian people, and then also like the people that pioneered through, all the people that came from Europe, obviously has a huge influence. But I feel like our influence is just the native side, and the early farmers have the biggest influence here. So I think that's very important.
Well,
BKW Farm down in Marana is the first century farm I visited here in Arizona, and their Taiwanese background, which is really cool. So that's their ancestry, and then I think the great grandparents moved here from Taiwan, and now they're still running that farm, and they produce a lot of the grain for Barrio Bread and for our restaurant. And
Okay.
so yeah, that's a really cool. I thought it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I saw them as maybe just an anomaly or an isolated thing, but it sounds like from what you're saying, that's a big part of our culture in Arizona, and that they're not the only ones that have had such an influence on our agriculture and cuisine. So that's really cool.
I think we need to spread the word. I think when we talk about what makes Arizona special, it's a culture that raised our food for us and is still growing our food for us. And that's really huge. And I feel like it's a misrepresented community. And I just think the more we talk about food and the people behind it, the more people will start understanding why Arizona is so special.
Yeah.
And I want people to come to the state and know what is Arizona. Like, you go to Italy, you know what you're there for.
Right. We feel the same way, and in many ways, I mean, Italian agriculture and cuisine, and we often talk about California agriculture and cuisine as having achieved a level of destination status. You're going to the French Laundry because the French Laundry is there, and you were expecting, you're spending money and organizing your time around, what is, and I have no quarrel with the idea it is a special and beautiful event, but there's a lot of that present in our state. You talk about education, and I think Oren and I, are particularly interested in how do you connect, um, go back to the conversation of the soil and why that has a relationship to the thing that's grown, and the chef's, shaping of that grown thing into this thing that lands on your plate, and how that's different than something that is more mass produced. In your time, looking at Arizona cuisine, as a chef, as a consumer, as a community member, do you feel like you have noticed a meaningful change in the community? Do you notice that as you left after COVID, and you said there are some people that sort of fell into your footsteps, so to speak, there must have been some movements afoot that were attracting people into, hey, this is important. So how might you describe the evolution or the changes that have gone on in whatever time frame makes sense to you?
I mean, I think the big change is the consumer, because they want better food.
Yeah.
They want interesting, nutrient dense food.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating when you go to a restaurant and get bad food. Like you don't. It's so expensive now for everyone
It's true.
to go out. So like you want to have a meaningful experience for what you're paying for, and there's just so many people in Arizona doing it right.
Yes.
Um, Charlene Badman at F&B, I think, is the goddess of food. She knows how to take any kind of produce and make it something that you'll remember the rest of your life. And she will use anything. Anything that is grown with love is going to be in that restaurant. And I think that is what's happening is there's a lot of people doing that. There's not exactly on that level, but there's a lot of people that are supporting the farmers there because they realize that it's better product, it lasts longer, it's nutrient dense. We grow so many cool varieties that you'll never find in grocery stores or even from a purveyor. It just makes sense to work with the local farmers, and there's a lot of them that really take a lot of care in nurturing that soil and growing healthy things and really tailoring it to your style. And I mean, you can't, it's silly to be an agricultural state and not use the agriculture from Arizona. It's depressing to hear that most of our stuff gets shipped out of state to other places. And we're buying, like most restaurants are buying stuff from other places. And it makes no sense when we have so much local stuff that's so incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm hoping, not hoping, but my opinion is that the connections between the state of our collective health, which is deplorable, sadly, in that we have so many diseases that are linked immediately to what people are eating. We can take exercise out of the picture even and just look at, what is the food that people are eating, and it's creating, in my opinion, an epidemic of obesity and diabetes, hypertension,
yeah,
and all the things that are killing us more than anything else. And what I have been trying to, evangelize is that it's not an act of virtue to be eating these foods, that this is actually where it's the most flavorful. Like these healthy, wonderful foods are much more flavorful than, I was born in 1970. So in the 70s, right, we had, if I say health food, that's a synonym for things that don't taste good,
yeah,
health foods.
carob instead of chocolate. Oh,
Yeah, right. All the stuff that, is like, oh, it's a health food store, as a kid. There's nothing
yeah.
good. There's nothing good in here, you know. But as, you know, so Warren, I mean, you're doing a lot of that connection now, right? I mean, that bread is not bread. Bread is, what looks to be a bagel on the plate may bear no resemblance to something that might look in some way remotely similar, but there's a different creature in front of you, that's going to present itself different in terms of flavor, in terms of its effect on your health. I mean, this is something that you're doing right now and have done your whole career too.
Yeah, I think what's curious to me, and Pete and I talk about this quite a bit, is helping the consumer and not just the dining consumer, where it's the consumer in general. Everyone eats, of course, but it's having a deeper appreciation for the food that you're eating. And I think, Tamara, the type of dishes and cuisine that you are focused on and how you produce that food and how you forage and you work with farmers, that takes a lot of care. And I think when that hopefully translates to the customer, where now they appreciate more what they're eating, and then as a result, like Pete talked about, there's there's a better health implication because I'm not so focused on eating so much of this. I'm focused on eating the right food and then, reaping the benefits of that, not just health wise, but again, on the ecology of our state. You mentioned, how we can't take away too much in foraging because, or can't remove too much because there might be other wildlife that's dependent on that. And, we've talked a lot about, like we had Tim Peterson on from Arizona Grass Raised Beef. And I think, when I think of eating his beef, or serving his beef, a lot of that has to do with the ecological benefits of how they raise beef, the old way, roam through the countryside and, driving up the Flagstaff, you see them all along, in the hills along the side of the road and over to Prescott. And
Oh, no.
create an environment, and what you're doing help the consumer understand how this benefits not just them, but the environment around them, and how our state benefits from it, and our community, most importantly. So yeah, I really, it's more just echoing what you were saying, but uh, I think that it's chefs like you and restaurateurs like you who are helping Arizonans understand it, and even the visitors, the visitors I think are appreciating a lot more the cuisine of Arizona. The last thing I'll mention on this note is a long time ago I read Dan Barber's Third Plate. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to read that, but he talked about his visits to Spain, and I've never been to Spain, but how he speaks of Spain is how I I feel about Arizona, the connection with the land and the terroir is in everything you eat. And it kind of resonates throughout everything, the wine, the spirit, the cuisine and everything. And I think we have something very special here. And you're one of the ambassadors of that specialness, so to speak. So that's
It does the work for you, right?
yeah.
It is really special here. You don't I mean, you have to do some background work and make sure that you're serving safe food and it's going to taste good. But in general, it's just so interesting, the history here and what we can provide, that it should be really easy to really educate people about it. But it's kind of new, and it needs a lot more work. We have a
Yeah.
lot of work to do to kind of teach people, because you'll always get the ones where, what's your favorite restaurant? Texas Roadhouse, like
Sure.
people
Yeah.
have their go-tos for a lot of reasons. And a main reason is because those chain restaurants are very consistent and they always know what they're going to get when they go there. So like the work is providing consistency and teaching them so they know what they're going to get when they come. And really making it special by, using the farmers and creating that education that just continues and it never ends.
When you,
And
yeah,
yeah, a lot of work to do.
when you put your long lens on and you look at the future, um, when you see 5, 10 years out, will it be a coevolution of the consumer and the chef and the restaurateur, or will one take the lead? Will the consumer demand more from the chef and the restaurateur than they're getting, or will the chef be
Uh-huh.
how's
Well,
this going to play out?
it's a really complicated question, mostly because we're in a very complicated time. We're in a time where the food we're sourcing is skyrocketing, the
Mm,
cost.
yes.
And I think that plays the biggest role right now, where people want to go support smaller restaurants that are using local ingredients, but the costs are pretty intense to where people really can't very much. So I think the future is really figuring out how to use foods thoughtfully
Hmm.
so people can afford it,
Right.
and forgetting about the really exciting truffles and wagyu and whatever, which, it's great experiences, but people need to survive. They want to keep their nutrient dense foods. And I think it's educating them about getting their proteins through tepary beans or through rabbit, which if we could source it locally would be very sustainable. Pardon me. And I think the future is really resetting our minds of what we want to eat
Yeah.
and how to source it, and teaching the youth. It's really important to teach the youth. I'm sorry, I'm not used to talking so much, but
That's okay.
really educating the youth on farming,
Hmm.
and getting them to do it, I think will make a big difference in 10 years.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, like, just like the work you do with the Blue Water Project is a fantastic approach. Um, well, like, I work with an organization separate from that called Junior Achievement, and they teach financial stability and, how- you know, uh, financial literacy, and they don't do it with high school kids, they do it with fifth grade, you know? If we can
Maybe a glass of water.
if we can connect with those kids, then you get them before they go into college and all that. And one of the things I realized lately is, one of Pete and I's missions or goals is to try to get some of these great foods into our local universities. It's just such a shame that, these young adults who are going into like U of A and ASU and NAU and all the other great schools we have here, they're at this time where they're absorbing so much and they're learning so much and eating the worst food ever. Like they have to eat it because it's part of their meal plan. It's the fact that you're trying to influence or you are influencing that next generation. Hopefully they're demanding that type of cuisine and food and that nutrient dense food before they go and take into college if that's their plan. Because it's really sad that, we're basically, while these young adults are so influential it's easy to influence their future behaviors, it we're doing that with just really poor food, and then that's what they become accustomed to when they leave.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of work to do, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be fascinating to see how the inputs change in the next 10 years in terms of agriculture, because it, big agriculture and, all of that created a certain set of incentives that led itself to the commodification of, food, and that, a hamburger is commodified, and it's the distinctions between the brands were set by the marketing of the experience less than the food itself. The it was the sloganization and the rather than a chef driven, farmer driven experience. But we may find where in this crisis of how we're doing things, that what comes out of it is a reorientation back towards something smaller, more local, which will change. I hope that the incentives get changed to do that. I think we could find ourselves in a healthier place if we were eating things that were grown close to us. Well, Tamara, people here are going to be listening to you, and they're going to want to find you and experience your, you as a chef. So tell us, where do people learn more about you from here?
Well, I am cooking at Shift Kitchen and Bar up in Flagstaff, Arizona. We're open 7 days a week. You will find Arizona eccentric food on our menu.
Right.
Yeah, otherwise on Instagram, Tamara_Stanger, I usually post a lot about farm life, foraging, food, and all the good things. So
Yeah.
that's probably the best place to follow me.
Awesome.
I did read a little bit about Chef, but can you is that a full service restaurant?
Yeah, so Shift, we're close to 60 seats. It's kind of like the shift. The goal of the restaurant is to shift your mind away from traditional dining. It's more that shared experience. It's more of coming in and experience flavors and different foods that you might not be familiar with. And our bar program's pretty awesome. Restaurant's been around for 9 years. The original owner, Dara, she is their pastry chef and she's pretty amazing. But Shift is yeah, you can come sit at the chef counter, which is really cool, and watch everybody cook your food, or in more
Oh, nice.
personal area in the back dining room and enjoy your meal. It changes constantly. The menu is constantly changing with the seasons or the ingredients, you know?
Really cool. So what's different about this experience than some of your past? Anything that what I found when I shift in my career from one concept or one type of restaurant to opening a new one or joining a new team, you get to kind of take, you know, reinvent yourself a little bit and kind of come in and say, well, these are the things I know that I get better at, or I'd like to really expand my how I approach these. What's been different for you at Shift than maybe past positions?
I think the difference here is I've already kind of established myself, but now I'm reestablishing myself and re-educating. Whereas before, people knew what to expect, but it's been a few years. So now it's just re-educating people. There's a lot of people I know that come in that already know what to expect. But I think, like I said before, I have a lot of work to do in educating people. It's creating that beautiful experience, you know, with food that really tastes good because flavor is important. But at the same time, really showing them how special it is. And that's a lot of work. So it reestablishing my position, you kind of take that white belt stance and you go in there and you don't brag about what you can do. You just go in there and you introduce people to stuff that might change their lives, hopefully.
That's right. Well, the black belts never have to tell people they have a black belt there, Chef. You know that your work speaks for itself because well, thank you for everything that you shared with us today. And Oren and I need to take a field trip up to Shift and
Yeah.
come up and see you. That would be a great time. And we hope that you will come back again and continue to tell us the story as it unfolds. So, thank you so
I
much.
would love to. There's always so much to talk about. Thanks for having me on.
Every time I have 5 kids, and when they graduate high school, one of mine is graduating here, I take them, we go hike the Grand Canyon after their graduation, and they usually are back up the hill a lot faster than I am. It'd be like 18 hours, but we're definitely going to come by and visit you. That'll be a treat. But we have deep connections in Flagstaff. As you know, Don started his bakery in Flagstaff, and he has a lot of friends up there. And then we're very close with Mario at Matador Coffee Roasters. Work and very closely. So we have a lot of connections in Flagstaff. Now we have one more, and you're going into busy while Phoenix and Tucson start downshifting into summer here. You're going into peak season, so that should be fun. So hopefully you all have a really busy summer, and we'll definitely come and visit.
Thank you.
Yeah.